This podcast is for SEO professionals, and each week, with the help of our wonderful guests, we discuss the important stuff that actually affects our careers and progression, but sadly often doesn't get talked about. You know, the invaluable soft and interpersonal skills that are often taken for granted, such as the skills we need for listening, time management, communication, and more. We also talk about the big issues that affect us and our careers, such as burnout, imposter syndrome, self-belief, saying no, plus other big issues and obstacles. With this podcast, we want to share knowledge on topics that unlock our listeners' true potential and enhance not only their careers, but all parts of their lives. So, are you ready to prioritize your own personal growth and career development? Then let's crack on with this week's episode. Hello and thank you for joining us for another episode of the SEO Mindset podcast, where your hosts are myself, Sarah McDowell, and the ever so fabulous Tazmin and Suleman, with new episodes going out every Thursday. This week we are talking about public speaking, which is quite exciting because me and Tazmin talk about our own experience of public speaking and what we've done. And we also get into actionable tips, strategies and advice of what to do if you're wanting to do more public speaking yourself. And you'll be pleasantly surprised at the experience that you do have. So before we crack on, just a reminder of how you can support us. You can give us a one-off donation. We're set up on Buy Me a Coffee. You can find a link in the show notes. And we have a newsletter. So we regularly send out updates, news, episodes about the podcast and what me and Tazmin are doing. So if you want to sign up to that, follow the link in the show notes. Okay, let's crack on with some public speaking. Hello, Tazmin.
Hello, Sarah.
So I'm just going to let our audience know what just happened there. So getting familiar with Lyrebird Studios, getting familiar with the lovely swanky tech, but we just recorded the intro then and I forgot to put your microphone on.
She's so rude. So rude. This is just her excuse for her bad behaviour.
Something that I can do though to show my professional levels.
Yeah.
Like, let's go for, because obviously we've got the sound pad, haven't we? We were playing around with that last time.
What
let's
was it,
go.
turquoise?
You did turquoise, so let's go for another colour and see what the noise is.
Seeing that I'm in a blue top, we'll go for the pale blue. Yeah. What is that?
That's like suspense, isn't it? Like you've said something that's like, oh, I've got something. I'm going to say something and you press the button.
Go on.
SEO is dead.
Oh dear. Come on, Sarah. We've got a podcast episode to record.
We are doing.
Oh,
we are
dear.
recording. By the way, caveat, SEO isn't dead. Just before any of our listeners get annoyed at that. That was humour.
Yeah. That was yellow, just in case anyone is interested.
Anyway, come away from the sound pads. Okay. What are we talking about?
We are talking today about the big P in SEO, which is presenting, because it just feels like it's becoming a bigger and bigger thing. More and more focus is being placed on being able to speak publicly, and yet so many of us are scared. It impacts our career, it can benefit it can benefit our brand. But how do you make it more manageable? Now, I just want to caveat, it's a big topic. So today we're not talking about creating a slide deck or anything like that. We're just talking about or storytelling, another big one. We should do an episode on storytelling.
We should do one on storytelling. When you said about we're not going to tell you how to do a presentation skills, I was like, I want to know what fonts and what swanky things and animations to use.
Yeah, it's all about animations. I need to up my game on my slide deck. But anyway, that's another story. But it's just about how to take that first step. Now, I want to start with two stats. The first one, not so surprising. The second one, actually, I'm agreeing with more and more. So the first stat is 10% of the population loves public speaking. 10% are terrified, but 80% are somewhere in the middle.
That is quite surprising. Because I would have put that at much. It's interesting that 80% fall somewhere in the middle, so they can be persuaded either way. I thought that would be less, and there'd be more people who are terrified.
I guess they are sort of terrified to the point they're absolutely not doing it, but there is a band of people that can get better at taking that first step and feeling confident enough to be able to take that plunge. The second stat is confidence increases with age, and that rings true. It says in this stat, 69% of people aged 45 and over felt quite or very confident, compared to only 25% of 16 to 24-year-olds. What do you think of that stat?
It's interesting because I definitely think, I'm just trying to relate this to me and my experiences. And I think when you're younger, you have this need, because you're figuring stuff out, you're figuring life, the world, not to get a bit too deep, but I think you still want people to like you. You want to find your people. And I think with that, your confidence, because you're new and you're taking on new experiences maybe, or you're trying stuff new for the first time. Whereas as you get older and you're having more experiences and you're trying more stuff, I would say that 33-year-old Sarah is a lot more confident than 25-year-old Sarah. I can definitely see that. And I think it's kind of your experience, what you've done in your life. And it's not that you care less about what people think about you, but I don't know whether there's a bit of, as you get older, it's a little bit like, I've got my people, I've got my friends, and there's a little bit more of, if you don't like me, like, why should I really care? Because what's the saying? If you don't like me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best, or what have you. But yeah, I think in a roundabout way, the first stat was a lot more shocking than the second one.
I think with the second one, I agree with you. And you were saying, what 30-year-old Sarah is far more confident. 50-plus-year-old Tazmin actually doesn't really care. I know who I am. And it's not about I've got my people and I've got my tribe. It's I know who I am.
Yes.
And that for me has been the biggest shift. I know who I am. I know what my values are. I know what I want to talk about. I know that it is for you, and I'm going to say it. And obviously, if people say, "Oh, it's rubbish," and start falling asleep in your talk, that's not going to be a good day for me. But you don't take things as seriously.
Yeah, and I think it is. That was a bit of a slip up for me, because we've just recorded an episode about people pleasing, and it shouldn't be. Obviously, you want to find your tribe and you want to find your people that you feel more comfortable with. But what is more important is being true and finding out who you are as a person and what you want to do, and what is important to you as well, isn't it?
Authentic. Our favourite word. Authentic. So I thought we'd start off talking about our experiences and history with public speaking and what we've learned. Mm-hmm. So you okay for me to go first?
By all means.
Sarah, would you believe that for the first maybe 20 years of my life, people considered me as quiet and shy? Don't laugh. Seriously. Oh, that's Tazmin. She's shy.
She's shy.
She doesn't talk to anyone.
Did you get, it takes her a while to come out of a shell.
I never came out of my shell. I just stayed in my bedroom and carried on reading and didn't talk to anybody. I didn't have friends at school.
Crikey.
I know. And in my 40s, I was promoted to data integrity manager, and part of my role was every month we had a canteen catch-up where every manager talked about the KPIs that they were looking after. And data, was right at the end. So you can imagine everyone's having a thrilling time throughout the whole of this.
How long were these meetings?
I think about an hour. And then Tazmin comes on to talk about data. Well, for the first few months, I didn't have the nerve to do it. And Steph, my wonderful manager, would say, Tazmin, do you want me to do it? And I'd say, yes, please. But I was mortified that she was doing part of my job. So I thought, okay, what do I do? And like most people would have handled that situation, to learn how to be more confident in getting up and presenting their data, I signed myself up for a stand-up comedy class in Camden.
Nice.
So I thought, if I can do this, I can do that.
Can you remember what your joke was?
I can, and I'm not going to repeat it. Absolutely not, because...
You've got to give what our listeners want, Tazmin.
No, sorry, because everyone hated me after I finished my joke because they thought, oh no, she's serious. She really means it. I'm thinking, it's a joke. Of course I didn't mean it, but no, I'll tell you later.
That's quite a lot of things that you're telling me off air.
On the drive back to the station, I'll tell you those two things. But what it taught me was you have to make a connection with your audience. And if you are a stand-up comedian, you don't have much time to do it. So things I would do was stand at the back of the room. And then it was my turn, I would move forward and sort of like smile at people and say hello and connect with the few people I could do at that time. And I added humour. So actually, and in the end, people were looking forward to my slide deck because they knew that it would come as a joke. Or a
highlight.
It was a highlight, absolutely. Or I would put people like the tech director on the spot, and say, oh, so Greg, what do you think of this? And he was mortified because he was suddenly on the spot, but everyone else laughed. And as the managing director said, well, if Greg doesn't have shoulders big enough to deal with that, then he doesn't deserve to be a director, does he? So when I gave my first talk at Brighton, I was nervous, but I'd learnt how to use humour to my advantage. And then later did my business coaching, and that told me about storytelling and not having notes. But the learnings I had was with content, less is more. And that's really hard for me because I love giving value. But don't worry so much about how much content, as long as you're comfortable with it. It's more about how you make the audience feel. So they do have some stats, and I haven't got them with me, but after a point of humour, people seem to engage and absorb more information. So bits of humour every now and then is really good, and be comfortable and go with the flow. So that's my story.
And what a wonderful, very good storytelling. Very, very good storytelling.
What about you?
Before I get into my story, something that I am thinking is when you first think about public speaking, you instantly think on a stage during a conference like Brighton SEO, for example. But public speaking can mean a lot of different things, like your example of your canteen meetings. That's public speaking. Or when maybe your agency side and you're pitching for some work from a client. Maybe there's a presentation that you need to do to stakeholders, or you need to do to other people of your company and team. Like public speaking, it's quite broad and there's a lot of different things to it, and it doesn't have to be as scary as you think it needs to be. But anyway, so my story is that, thinking back, I've always liked performance. There's always been a part of me which enjoys doing something in front of an audience because it gives me that adrenaline, it gives me that rush, and I love it. So at school, I was part of all the performing arts groups. I did a lot of dancing. I did acting and all of that stuff on the stage. So from a young age, I've always loved performance. I've always loved having using my own body and using myself as a creative instrument. I don't know if that sounds weird, but I think I've always enjoyed that creativity and the performance level. And then I went to university and I studied dance, and it was dance and culture. I had a fabulous time there. And again, because I was studying dance at university, there was theory alongside of it. So I still got my performance and my creativity through the different, like through ballet, Katak, African people's dance, all the different styles of dancing that we were doing. But there's always the theory-based side of things. So getting a point across in a discussion or presenting something that I was asked to around a topic at the time. But I got into student radio. So this is where people are going to be thinking, podcasting makes so much sense, because there was a point where I quite fancied myself as a radio presenter, a radio DJ, because something that I found was I've always loved performance, but when I was younger, I didn't realise performance could be through the voice. I thought performance was dancing, acting, singing. And it wasn't until I got into radio and started doing like hosting radio shows that I realised I really enjoyed speaking, and actually your voice in conversation, interviewing people, having interesting conversations, that's performance and that's creativity. And I think doing that opened up this whole new world for me, and that was what I focused on. So when I finished uni, I went travelling, and because I wasn't ready to take on the real world, wasn't ready to do proper adulting. But then I was like, okay, ran out of money, I needed a job. And at the time I was like, okay, what am I going to do here? Because I kind of figured that I'd still wanted to be creative and I wanted a way of performance, but I knew that I didn't want to do dance. So that is when I got into digital marketing, and I fell into search engine optimization. I applied for a reception role at a digital marketing agency. The reception role had already been filled, but so this was like 15 years ago, and they wanted new SEO recruits with no prior history or knowledge in it, because they wanted to sort of like teach you and build you up into working in SEO. And it took me a while, but I then realised that there was a whole performance side of SEO with speaking, because I remember going to like conferences and seeing people on the stage, and I was like, wow, I really want to do that. There was part of me that was like terrified and being like, how are they doing this? How are they just standing up in front of this audience and speaking? And gosh, they're like, the audience is paying attention. The audience is laughing, or I don't know. I was quite, what's the word?
Were you in awe?
Yeah, I was really in awe. And I was like, wow, I didn't even think that. Because with digital marketing, SEO, you think data, you think theory, and think of all of that. And when I saw that there was this whole other side, and then when there was podcasts and I saw that people were having podcasts about SEO, I was like, I'm in my element here. Like this is how I can still have my creativeness and have my element and do something that I'm passionate about and that I enjoy. I'm really going around the houses here, aren't I?
So when did you do your first SEO talk?
So my first SEO talk was probably when I was in my early 20s. Yeah. And it was to I can't remember what the talk was about, but I was definitely in my early 20s, and it was a quite small sort of like a handful of people that I was talking to. But as soon as I did it, like obviously I was nervous, because whenever you try something new for the first time, you're going to be scared. But I flipping enjoyed it, and I was buzzing. So my thing was, okay, I want to work up to doing a talk at Brighton SEO. And I did my first Brighton SEO talk, I think at like later 20s. And had a really good time. I was petrified because obviously before that I'd done smaller speaking to a handful of people, and like Brighton SEO just seemed to be like a massive step up. But yeah, and something that I remember someone saying is no one's wanting you to fail. Yeah. Most people have respect for you that you're even getting up in the first place. And it was similar, like what you were saying about have humour, be yourself up there, be interesting, do something that engages people. So yeah, and I really enjoyed, so I've done a few speaking gigs now. I've been international, so I spoke over in America, and obviously I get to do the podcast. But I suppose my big learnings is don't get in your head about it. The thought of doing it is always going to be worse than the actual doing of something. And if you try it and you don't like it, you don't have to do it again. But people are always going to be supportive and want you to do well. There's no one going to be like, oh, I hope she fails. I hope she like forgets her lines. And another thing is get really familiar with your talk. Know it. Yeah. Have fun with it.
So you've started to give some great advice.
Oh, we need to break, don't we?
Well, we've been rambling a bit, both of us, me I think especially. I do have one question though before we go off to our break. Would you like to speak at the big stage at Brighton?
Yeah.
Okay, I thought so.
I feel like with me, when it comes to speaking and talking, once I've done what feels big to me at that time, I'm ready for the next thing.
Brilliant. Wonderful to hear. Okay, let's take a short break, and then when we come back, we will be giving some tips on how to build up the courage to take that first step or take that step into a bigger stage.
There we go. Hi, Sarah here. Just quickly reminding you of the ways that you can support the podcast. So if you enjoy what me and Tazmin are doing, there are a couple of ways that you can support us. We are set up on Buy Me a Coffee. That means that you can give us a one-off donation. If you fancy doing that, there's a link in the show notes, and we would be very, very appreciative of that. You can also sign up to our newsletter. So if you want to keep up to date with the latest, with what's going on, episodes, events, anything and everything that me, Tazmin and the podcast are up to, you can do that by signing up to our newsletter, and you can unsubscribe at any time. I bet you're regretting asking me to tell my story now, aren't you?
Not at all. I loved it.
But yes, so we're back for part 2. So we've spoken about our experiences and our what we've learned and all of that lovely stuff. And it was lovely getting to know a bit more about you, Tazmin.
And actually hearing your story so much makes more sense now.
What do you mean?
Well, the whole radio presenting. I think you'd be a great, even a TV presenter.
Well, BBC, if you're listening, sign me up.
So what I thought, we always like to leave the listeners with some actionable tips, and we've given them the story, but it's probably given them some flavours of different elements of public speaking. So, the whether it's talking to a client or presenting to your own company or on a big stage. So I've got a few things I'd like to share. One is perspective, and you alluded to this, that actually you're getting up and doing something that many people won't do. So give yourself a pat on the back and enjoy it, as you mentioned earlier. The next one is, for me, be comfortable. Like tight shoes, something that you're not comfortable in, it's going to show in your talk. And what I used to do when I was really nervous about public speaking, and this is when I was doing the canteen catch-ups, was I'd always have a mug in my hand for two reasons. It would have warm water in it because my hands used to get really cold.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, really cold. But at the same time, it eluded that I was so relaxed.
You've got a cuppa.
I got a cuppa.
Smart.
But it made me feel safe. So some people will have like a paper clip in their pocket or something. Find something that's going to make you feel safer and more comfortable. The third one, again, building on what you said, practice, practice, practice. Especially the first few sentences. I always struggle with those. And I find that if you know your topic and you've practiced it and you get through those first few sentences, you're on a roll. But another reason is make those first few sentences really strong. That's your hook. Because if they're not engaged, if your listeners aren't engaged in the first 5-10 seconds, it's going to be very hard to bring them back again. So, yeah, don't underestimate the value of practicing your talk. And then the next two are almost opposites. So one is, don't worry, it's not about you. You're sharing some knowledge with the audience. It's for them to get value from it. So even if they learn one thing, it's a win. But the other thing is, although I've just said it's not about you, it absolutely is about you. What do you want from it? You are on a stage. And you've practiced a lot, you've put a lot of work in it, you should get something from it. So is there a particular point you want to get across? Is there some research that you're doing that's really important to you? Is there something about your own personal brand that you want to bring forward? Because what one of my managing directors said to me is, if you are standing in front of the board telling them something, you're not often going to get time like that. So make sure that you get across the point that you want to get across. And once you have given a talk, so if we, going back to the Brighton example, distribute it. And this is something that I really need to get better at. Distribute that talk as far and wide as you can, because that's your gravity. That's your strength. I recently built a look at what I did page, look at all the talks that I've done and because people are asking me, I thought I'm just going to put it all on a page, but it actually made me feel good. And next time somebody interviews me on a podcast, they've got that page. So gain from it. What are your thoughts, Sarah?
I love them all. I love all the tips and advice. So with practice, yeah. You can never practice a talk too much. You need to know your talk back to front. Because something that I remember was you put a talk together and you think, when I've put the talk together, I'm going to remember everything that I've put in. And you start presenting and a slide comes up and it throws you off because you're like, oh, I can't remember putting that thing in. So you really need to get familiar. And there is an art so when you're putting your talk together, don't start with the presentation, don't start with the slides, start with your story. Start with the journey that you want to take people on and jot it down and be like, okay, this is the end point, this is the end goal, this is what I want people to take away, and this is the journey that I'm going to take them on. Another thing that came to mind is less is more. So I think you could run into this tendency or trap of wanting to give people all of this information. You've got 20 minutes, half an hour, you want to cram it. People aren't going to take it all in. Yeah, especially if it's a conference that's got multiple speakers, it's gone on for a couple of days. Less is more. Always give. I think if you cram and you put too much in, it kind of takes away from what the message that you're trying to portray anyway. And it's hard for people to know, okay, what is it that I'm taking away? What is the action point? So always less is more, because then that gives you more time to relax, have fun, do your little comedic effects in there. And just remember that you are going to get better. So if you go up and do your first talk and you do a mistake, you do something wrong. That is going to happen. But if deep down you come off and you're quite buzzing and you've enjoyed it, give yourself time to get better. Like comedians do it, don't they? They, when they're working on new material or a new set, they will go to a venue and they'll do some practice talks or they'll get familiar and stuff. So remember that you're not going to be a pro straight away. You need to give yourself time to know what your style is and really have fun with it. And also do some research, like do look into some speakers. Yeah, look at what they're doing and see what you want to adopt and what you quite like and what you want to try for yourself. And just have fun with it. Yeah. And if you do, and another thing as well, just on if you do make a mistake, remember that it's only you that knows what is in your talk and what you were meant to say and what you weren't meant to say. No one knows what you didn't do, or that you forgot to say a stat, or you forgot to do this one thing. No one's going to know. And I suppose that kind of relates to it's not about you sort of thing.
So if anyone listening is part of that 80% that wants to take the plunge into public speaking, and this has inspired them, go and talk to your manager, work out a plan of how to do it. It might be doing a little presentation in the next team meeting, and then you build and you build and you build. So it doesn't mean that you have to go straight onto a big stage. And this thing about, getting better, everyone gets better with time, with practice. Even those people who are nailing it still want to get better. And I loved what you said about less is more. So, at last Brighton, we were listening to a talk. I think is it Charlie Hunt?
Charlie Hunt, yeah.
She had one message, 10 sticky words to describe your product, brand, whatever. And that's all she talked about. And actually, that's one of the talks that's sunk into my head.
Because there's repetition, it's going in your brain, and you've not been bombarded with all this information, all these stats, all these tips, all this advice that you should take away and implement.
Yeah, brilliant. So I think we've come to a natural end on that one, Sarah. I mean, I think we should do maybe an episode on storytelling and an episode on maybe the slide deck. Maybe we can get an expert in on that. But is there anything else you want to add?
No, I mean, I very much enjoyed this this conversation. It's something that I need to do, because obviously I've put together a website, and I need to do a Sarah in the wild. What have I done? Because I definitely think when you look back on all the stuff that you've done, all the talks that you've done, there's going to be stuff that you've forgotten about as well. So, and you'll be surprised at the experience that you do have anyway.
Yeah. Shout out to Alice Rowan for encouraging people to do that.
There you go. Shout out to you. Shall we say goodbye, take care of yourself, and until next time?
Goodbye, take care of yourself, and until next time.
Like a pro.